Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the travel debate. My name is Richard Resnick. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences, and it's my great pleasure each year to get to moderate this debate. This is the 19th such debate, and each year it seems to get bigger and bigger. And I'd like to, before I forget, thank Kate Miner and Adrian Aprick for organizing today's event and getting us a bigger room this year than last year. Last year we had the fire marshals after us, but this is terrific. So thank you. I think certainly of all the events in the faculty that we have each year, certainly this is a signature event, and I'd venture to say it's the most entertaining event in our faculty. This is the my eighth travel debate as dean, and I'm always overwhelmed by the quality of the debaters, by the tremendous topics that are chosen for us by the debating committee, and without fail, the dialogue is clever, it's articulate, and always puts a smile on our face. So to begin with, I'd like to invite Dean Emeritus David Walker to the podium to tell us a little bit about Dr. Travill and the history of the debate.
Thank you very much, Richard. This is Dr. Travill, Tony Travill. Would those who remember Dr. Travill raise their hands? Thank you. The number diminishes year by year, and I suspect I'm asked to do this because I'll be the last person standing. Tony Travill loved to debate. He was fearless in assuming positions often contrary to his own, a fearlessness attributed by many to his experience surviving being a rear gunner in the Royal Air Force Bomber Command in World War II, a position with a 1 in 5 mission death rate. He read medicine at the London Hospital Medical School, and he came to Canada in 1957, training in Montreal and then practicing in Orillia before coming to Queen's to study anatomy under the famed Dr. John Basmajian. Following fellowship in the United States, he returned to Queen's in the Department of Anatomy and was professor and head from 1969 to 1978. Tony was a strict parliamentarian and a noted and published faculty historian. He had a passion for debate on current social, political, and educational issues, and for many years he delivered a rigorous and challenging lecture to incoming first-year medical students during orientation week. He taught my class of Med 71, which refers to the last man standing. He taught my class of 71, and I notice we've got a class that's 50 years later than mine right now. He taught my class of Med 71 anatomy and histology, and he was famous for his interactive pedagogic style. He would show the class a histologic slide of some tissue or other, and then pick on someone in the class with the question, "What is this, and do you have one?" which led us to some considerable reflection before answering. I'm very pleased that members of the Travill family are here tonight, as always, so please join me in welcoming Louise, Patrick, and Andy Travill. And as a previous debater with Eve Purdy, I wish the panelists good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And I'd also join David in welcoming the Travill family. They're here every year, and it makes this event even more special. So thank you for coming. Before I introduce the speakers, let me thank Chris Frank in particular for all his hard work as the chair of the Travel Debate Committee. Chris, you and your committee have put in an enormous amount of effort and time, and it's greatly appreciated. This year's committee included many former debaters, and members included Chris Frank and Mala Joneja, Romy Nitsch, Roya, Abdmoulaie. I did mispronounce that a little. Sorry, I tried. There, okay. All right. Okay, we're going by first name now, only. Daniel Huang, Stephen Archer, Michelle Gibson, David Holland, Julia Milden, Thomas Cron, Max Boulay, Eve Purdy, John Redan, and David Taylor. Thanks to all of you and to our staff members, as mentioned, Kate and also Michaela, for helping organize tonight's event. Dudley Field Malone, a famous U.S. attorney, once said, I have never in my life learned anything from any person who agreed with me. So in that spirit, I hope that everyone gains a few new pearls of wisdom from tonight's debate. Many things in medicine are not clear. Medical professionals and scientists have a responsibility to see both sides of a dilemma and to give each due consideration and airtime. And while our debaters always engage with passion, you must realize that the positions they adopt are not necessarily the ones that they actually believe. In fact, the plaque for tonight's debate is already engraved with the names of individuals from both teams. It never indicates winners because the honor, of course, is in the debate itself. So we will ask you, though, to vote tonight for one of our teams. Please divorce yourself, A, from your own opinions, and B, from what you expect the opinions are of the debaters. It's really all about the quality of the argument. And so I will ask after the debate for a show of hands, and we will start, however, with a preliminary cast of the audience to see how many minds are changed by the debate. So first I'll introduce our debaters, and the debate proposition will be it resolved that a woman in medicine program is not needed in 2017. And on the yay side, and I won't pronounce her last name, is Romy, who is an assistant professor in our Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, mother of 2 fantastic kids who I've met on the street. Yeah, yes, of course you were there. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. What's the name of that NBC anchor? Right, yeah. She has a passion for medical education and a special interest in medical ethics. Clinically, Romy is a very busy obstetrician gynecologist with a special interest in MIS, minimally invasive surgery, and chronic pain. She also has an interest in hospital administration as it pertains to the provision of surgical care. Romy noted that any skills she might demonstrate tonight come from 7 years of debating with her kids. And Romy's partner tonight is Roya, who is... Yes, there we go. They're cheering because I pronounced your name right. Yeah. Roya is a second-year student in the class of 2020. Another cheer, yeah. I'm sure there are a few 2020s out there. Who's originally from Vaughan, Ontario. And during her undergraduate studies at Queen's, she majored in gender studies. A little-known fact about her is that she's a black belt in Taekwondo. So be careful, other debaters. And outside of medicine, she also enjoys painting, spending time with friends, and as much travel as her visa credit allows. Right. On the nay side, we have Mala Joneja. Mala is Associate Professor in the Department of Medicine and our school's inaugural Director of Diversity. She's the Program Director for Rheumatology, the residency program, and also the Associate Program Director for the Core IM program. With Dr. Archer, she coordinates medical grand rounds for Queen's University's Department of Medicine and is the acting division chair for the Division of Rheumatology. She's a busy, busy, busy person. Her interests in medical education include role modeling and postgraduate medical education, the hidden curriculum, professionalism, transformative learning, and now, added to that, is debating. And Dr. Joneja's partner is Daniel Huang, a first-year student. There we go. Hold up that sign, Dan the man. Let's see the sign. There we go. Dan That's right. There we go. Exactly. This is getting already raucous, yeah. So Daniel was born in Beijing and grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba. He completed his undergraduate studies in immunology at McGill, where he also learned how to debate because he was on the McGill's debating union team. So I'm not sure that's fair. So the debate rules are strict. The rules of the debate are that the yay side will open with 10 minutes, the nay side will follow with 10 minutes, and then that process will be repeated once. Yay and nay each have another 10 minutes. At the end, each side will have 2 minutes to sum up. We'll keep the clock very tight. And where's Lindsay? Lindsay's the timekeeper, and she will loudly bang the travel debate gavel to drown out any unruly debaters. And if they refuse to stop talking, the audience will be invited to come and potentially physically remove the debaters if they go over time. Just a quick word about the gavel. It was made for our debate by Chaim Berman, who was the grandfather of Dr. Hal Berman of Queen's Medical Class of 1998, and it's been used since the inception. So now, before we begin, let's see a show of hands. How many of you, sort of a priori, have arrived at the conclusion, let me find it, the conclusion that, well, it's not repeated in my speech, so be it resolved that a Women in Medicine program is not needed in 2017. Let's see a show of hands for your current positions. And how many feel the opposite on the nay side? Okay, so just about an even split. So we'll see how things go at the end. So I'd like to now call on the Dr. Romy Nitsch from the yay side to start the debate.
You want to tell me when to go? Emily Howard Stowe was the first female to practice in Canada and an activist for women's rights. Dr. Stowe was denied entrance into U of T in 1865. The vice principal stated, "The doors of this university are not open to women, and I trust they never will be." As you all know, the doors of medicine are wide open to women now. Tonight we are here to argue that a Women in Medicine program is not needed in 2017. Remember this name. To quote a dear friend of mine, Dr. David Messenger, "You are totally going to lose based on the resolution." Well, let's see about that. Roya and I don't tend to like losing. Women in Medicine programs exist in various forms throughout the country and traditionally have had several areas of focus: recruitment, retention, improving culture and environment for women in medicine, encouraging scholarship, and promoting leadership. The wording of the resolution seems to suggest that a Women in Medicine program is no longer necessary in the year 2017 because women have achieved equality. Let's take a look at those first two mandates. Recruitment. Women have been entering school in record numbers for many years now. In Roya's class, there's a 62-38 split in favor of women. In Q-Arms, the first-year cohort is entirely represented by women. In 2010, the Globe and Mail, in its series Failing Boys, highlighted that women made up almost 77% of the McMaster entrance pool. The dean's response was to look beyond grade point average, which seemed to confer females an advantage, obviously, and impose a subtle affirmative action to help promote male enrollment. Let's look at retention. In Canada, women will soon be the dominant face of medicine. Most retiring physicians are male, and over half of physicians in Canada under the age of 35 are female. With these statistics in mind, perhaps you're expecting us to argue that, in fact, in the year 2017, we need a Men in Medicine program. I may have had the same thought a few years ago when a male medical student interested in OBGYN asked me if I thought it would look good on his CV to join a Women in Medicine interest group. Today, however, we're going to argue that a Women in Medicine program is not necessary because it's outdated, it's ineffective, and it's potentially detrimental to the advancement of women in medicine. The doors of medicine are no longer closed to women, but there are still many ceilings to shatter: promotion, advancement, senior leadership. Women in medicine groups speak to and for a group that is already aware of this potential glass ceiling. We would argue that contemporary thinking should focus far less on women that need to be accommodated and far more on the systems that would allow all people to perform to their fullest potential. However, I think it's going to take some brave individuals, not programs, to get us there. Furthermore, the current mandate of such programs fails because it's not inclusive enough. Barriers still exist in medicine. They are racial and they are economic. Although enrollment has increased for women, these are mainly white women. There are many ethnicities that are still grossly underrepresented in medicine. Let's return to those traditional mandates of women in medicine programs. One major area of focus of a women in medicine program is to help women charter a course of advancement to leadership positions. It is in this pursuit of advancement and leadership that I feel women in medicine programs are failing. Despite efforts of women in medicine programs, women still do not share a meaningful seat at the leadership table. The deans of our medical schools across Ontario are male. Here at Queen's, the heads of our own departments, emergency medicine, pediatrics, surgery, psychiatry, internal medicine, are all male. In my own department, obstetrics and gynecology, a women's health specialty, we have yet to have a female head of department. Why? A big part of the answer is that women are saying no to these positions, despite the existence of women in medicine programs. Qualified women should be encouraged to step up to the plate and start saying yes. At the faculty level, it's time for women to start trusting ourselves. The science supports us. According to a JAMA article published last year, patients cared for by female doctors fared better than those treated by men. In fact, the study's authors concluded that thousands less patients would die if male physicians could achieve the same outcomes as females. The dean is looking very cynical. And just 2 months ago, an article published in the BMJ stated that patients of female surgeons have better outcomes. We need to anatomize the findings of these articles and take what we find, the very success in our clinical care, and rebuild the system. What has worked well for women in taking care of our patients would almost certainly work well in leadership roles. When women share a meaningful seat at the leadership table, perhaps we can better tackle gender, racial, and economic barriers that continue to exist in medicine. Perhaps then we could have a culture and environment that works better for ourselves, for patients, other healthcare workers, and society at large. So why, might you ask, is this not the role of women in medicine programs? The opposition may argue that women in medicine programs provide a safe space for women to join a community and develop self-trust and cultivate leadership skills. Perhaps, but the focus of women in medicine programs is becoming outdated. Year after year, medical students in women in medicine programs approach female faculty to join in various panel discussions. Year after year, the questions are the same. How do you achieve work-life balance? How do you manage your on-call schedule and your family? Is it possible to have a child in residency? Did you find it challenging to be a surgeon and a mother? Should I consider a lifestyle specialty? There are no lifestyle specialties. So that I can better manage work and a family. The very nature of these questions does two things. It perpetuates the stereotypes of traditional female roles, and it reinforces certain realities. Women are more likely to spend time with their families, and men are more likely to value service over private responsibility. Women in medicine programs now seem to merely serve as support groups for women who want to have it all, for women who want to maintain a good balance between work and family life, or at the very least, validate one's decision to do so. Let's face it. In medicine, we do have the privilege of reasonable autonomy. If we choose to work less, reduce patient load, accept smaller income, turn down key academic jobs, perhaps we could get that work-life balance. As a group of women, we have to accept that this is mostly a matter of choice. But if women want to shatter ceilings, the mandate of such programs has to change. We have to ask tougher questions and make some difficult decisions. I'm not suggesting that the questions shift to where can I freeze my ova so I can have my children after 40, or where does Hillary Clinton buy such fabulous pantsuits? As a member of the Faculty of Medicine, it's time for us to suggest that women in medicine programs put an end to Dr. Mom panels. They're not working for us, and perhaps they're even working against us. Just this month, the Vancouver Sun cited that the feminization of medicine, the surging number of female doctors who generally work less because of family responsibilities, is one factor in the shrinking productivity phenomenon of doctors. I think this is a rather infuriating choice of words, if you ask me. However, women in medicine groups are making us an easy target. Women in medicine programs often highlight and reinforce pressures faced by women in balancing work and responsibilities as families. Balancing responsibilities of families as reason to saying goodbye to academic medicine or turning down opportunities to pursue key leadership positions. They emphasize what Dr. Boxer from Stanford Medical School calls the motherhood penalty, where mothers in medicine are often perceived as being less committed than their male counterparts. Women in medicine programs have been known to give talks on, it's okay to be the good enough mom or the good enough clinician. You can do it all, but not at the same time. We all need wives. There are mothers in the house, and we will look out for your medical student daughters and choose your partners wisely, as this is the key to your success and your sanity. I bet my husband wished he went to that talk. We need to recognize that the pathway of success to leadership may be a matter of sheer determination. Women in medicine groups may cite that there is a leadership gap, but we as women aren't doing enough to close it. If we truly as women want equity, we have to accept the challenges that such equity would demand of us. Just like women such as Dr. Stowe fought their way into medicine in the 1800s, perhaps there are women amongst us who need to make some sacrifices to obtain those key leadership positions. Once we are there, we can acknowledge system deficiencies and barriers and start to break them down so that those following in our footsteps may take a more meaningful and balanced path. The very barriers that women in medicine programs cite as obstacles to leadership positions may be more reflective of system issues rather than female issues. The narrative of countless blogs, opinion pieces, and medical journals is one that paints a bleak picture of the epidemic of functional physician burnout, where one carries out the duties of a physician but is heavily burdened by exhaustion, compassion fatigue, and hopelessness. Perhaps once women finally achieve a gender balance in leadership positions, can we translate what makes us such excellent clinicians into exceptional leaders? Perhaps only then we can demonstrate that work hours can be flexible, that high-level jobs can be shared. Perhaps then we can demonstrate that unsustainable work standards don't translate into better output. Remember JAMA and the BMJ? We're doing something right. And finally, medicine would be a better profession if it were more inclusive at all levels, from entrance to leadership. Medicine should be a profession that transcends gender, racial, and economic groups. Am I done? Oh, I have so much good stuff to say.
Dear opponents, respected colleagues, students, and friends, thank you for the opportunity to participate in the annual travel debate. The resolution before you is a Women in Medicine program is not needed in 2017. I'd like to start with a riddle. A father and son have a car accident and are both badly hurt. They are both taken to separate hospitals. When the boy is taken in for an operation, the surgeon says, "I cannot do the surgery because this is my son." How is this possible? You know how this is possible. The surgeon is a woman, the boy's mother. Now I ask you, how is it possible that that is a riddle that people can't get their heads around? Yes, it is an older riddle, but in 2014, a Boston University psychology professor gave this riddle to 100 university students and 100 children. In both groups, only a minority, 15%, came up with the answer that the surgeon is the boy's mother. That was in 2014. Looking back just a little bit further, when I was a medical student here in the early 90s, we had a course called Psychosocial Aspects of Medicine. We called it PAM. In one of the sessions, we watched a video of an actress reciting a passage from Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. At the time, I don't think I grasped its significance. I do now. To persuade you to vote no to this resolution, a Women in Medicine program is not needed in 2017. I will present to you a series of arguments that have come out of my deconstruction of the resolution itself. Now, deconstruction is a social science term, and it might make some physicians and basic scientists uncomfortable. So I suggest you look at this as a dissection of the motion, and that was for the anatomists. A women in medicine program is not needed in 2017. Let's start with the women in the women in medicine. Women have been excluded from medicine. Romy just told you. And the women in medicine today, especially in academic medicine, do not have equal standing. An educational scholar by the name of Witz described in her book called Professions in Patriarchy the existence of actual forces of exclusion that developed in the profession of medicine. It has been suggested that medicine has evolved. Yes, medicine has evolved. However, it has been brought to my attention that gender bias has been epigenetically maintained in the DNA of medicine as a profession. And that was for Dr. Ann Ellis, women medicine. Now, in the present, 50%, greater than 50% of the medical school class is female. So if in the present equity exists, tell me, why does the present class of medical students have a woman of medicine interest group that Roya has been known to frequent? Roya the Destroyer. Now, there is a feminist name if I have ever heard one. In August 2016, the prestigious journal Academic Medicine put out a theme issue on gender diversity in academic medicine. That was last year. And now the resolution in front of us implies that gender equity is not an issue. The journal reports that despite the growth in the number of female medical school graduates, women continue to face challenges moving into leadership positions. Romy told you that too. The authors ask themselves, has anything changed in 25 years? Another article suggests there is both implicit and explicit bias that doesn't allow women to take on leadership positions. So what? One could argue that now the number of female med school graduates is equitable. What's a big deal about leadership? It will come. Women need to work hard. Women in leadership need to be there now. Leadership steers the profession, and that women are not included in this is not acceptable. Leadership is influence, serving interests, choosing research agendas, mentoring, moving forward. We need to promote women in leadership positions now. We need to support women in academic medicine now, which is why you must vote no for this resolution. Let's move on to the program part of this. What exactly is a Women in Medicine program? You should ask Dr. Stephen Archer. Stephen Archer started one in the Department of Medicine. He started it last year. So if you don't want to upset him, I don't think you should be supporting a motion that states we should remove it. When this was starting up, I asked Dr. Chris Frank, my friend and colleague, I said to Chris, what do you think about us having a Women in Medicine program? Do you know what he said? This is a true story. He said, babe, you can do anything you want. His delivery was meant to be a joke, but I appreciated the sentiment. What a Women in Medicine program does is support women, look at the issues and challenges they face, and get them to the leadership position. A Women in Medicine program will bring attention to gender bias, which we may think in our rosy view of 2017 is no longer an issue. Women in Medicine programs say, we want women in medicine. We want to promote women in medicine. We want women in medicine to thrive. A recent medical education journal, Medical Teacher, published in October 2017, last month, offered an article with 12 tips to promote gender equity in international academic medicine. The 12 tips described in the article are the very things a Women in Medicine program would do, and more, in fact. In fact, a Women in Medicine program alone might not even be enough. Leaders in medical education are telling us that if women in academic medicine are not supported now, there will be no change from the present state. That is why a Women in Medicine program is needed. That is why you must vote no. Now I come to the last part of the motion, in the year 2017. Justin Trudeau wanted gender equity in his cabinet, he said, because it was 2015. What he meant by that was that it is 2015 and there is not gender equity in politics. Well, what I say when I shamelessly copy Justin Trudeau is exactly the opposite of the resolution before you. We need a Women in Medicine program because it is 2017 and not much has changed. I'm going to tell you this from my personal experience. If you are a male physician sitting in the audience, I want you to try and remember the last time you were mistaken for a nurse or the cleaning lady. Someone other than the physician in charge. It happens to female physicians all the time. Because I am still, in 2017, not recognized at first glance as a physician, you must vote no. I want to add a point about equity. We don't have equity in medicine. We are a compassionate and caring profession, yes, but we don't have equity. Think about all the other groups that have been excluded from medicine and still face exclusion, including Black men and women, Indigenous men and women who face economic barriers in entering medicine. When you have a Women in Medicine program, you are saying we are inclusive. We respect diversity. That's what we do here. That's why Dr. Resnick gave me the position of Director of Diversity and Equity. I now understand what Virginia Woolf was saying. She said, and I quote, "Even when the path is nominally open, when there is nothing to prevent a woman from being a doctor, there are many phantoms and obstacles looming in her way. You have won rooms of your own in a house hitherto exclusively owned by men. You are able, though not without great labor and effort, to pay the rent. But this freedom is only a beginning. The room is still bare. It still has to be furnished. It has to be shared. In other words, there is still a lot to be done. Thus, you must vote no for this resolution." Thank you.
Did you know the larynx of a woman is more similar to that of a great ape than to a man's? That was the status of medical knowledge at Queen's University in the year 1881. There were 3 female medical students in that anatomy lecture, and they stood up and they left in protest. Whether it was their simian similarities or their refusal to accept known medical fact, these women proved so offensive to their male colleagues that they were barred from attending the same classes, and they were segregated into a separate women's program, which would close due to a lack of funds about a decade later. And from that point, Queen's would not accept female medical students for another 50 years. Today, in 2017, women are evidently still a problem at Queen's School of Medicine as we debate the merits of yet another Women in Medicine program. New century, same type of solution. A women's program in any form, whether an interest group or an enrichment program, isn't needed, and the reason is not because women have achieved equal representation. nor is it because women can now pursue higher education, vote, and yes, even wear pants. There is still work to be done, but what this work requires of us is systemic change and unified efforts towards female empowerment, not isolated programs or interest groups. The opposition would have you believe that women in medicine programs provide an inclusive, safe space for women to talk about their issues and how to overcome the challenges that they face. You may have noticed that this sounds quite a lot like a self-help group. It seems that while we as a medical profession have moved past hysteria, we still treat femininity as a disease. A women's program as a safe space is something we should reconsider. To touch on Dr. Nitsch's earlier point, the majority of women in our Women in Medicine interest group, which I have attended, so I do know a thing or two about, the majority of women in this group are not women of color, are not women of a lower socioeconomic status, are not women from diverse religious backgrounds, are not trans women, and aren't even representing women in other areas within medicine. So we have to ask ourselves with this in mind, who are these programs designed for, and indeed, who do they end up attracting? If you're wondering why women would even need a safe space in the first place, I'll ask you to consider the negative physical, mental, social, and political impacts on both individual women and women as a collective that have been caused by people like Bill Cosby, Jian Ghomeshi, Harvey Weinstein, or the infamous sexual predator and misogynist, US President Donald Trump. While we support the idea of a safe space, as women, we have to recognize that we can't confine ourselves exclusively to spaces that are safe, because, as I mentioned earlier, they're not even inclusive of most women. And if we let misogyny scare us into isolating ourselves, we will miss the opportunity to educate, to empower, and to create safer spaces for everyone, everywhere. A Women in Medicine program is also very tokenistic. While the opposition claims that these programs will help women progress, the reality is that if such a program only serves a select, privileged few, then it doesn't actually accomplish what we originally thought. It ends up a symbolic gesture of inclusivity without truly including everyone, something that we can cite as evidence of how progressive we are, while still perpetuating existing cycles of power. The empowerment of women should not be treated as a box that we can check off to satisfy the accreditors. But this sort of tokenism is to be expected. Any social justice movement that works towards equality is inherently political. And in medicine, we tend to fear politics and avoid controversy. So if we want to institutionalize a political movement or an equality movement and get medical professionals to engage, we'll end up making the program a bit safer. We'll water it down, and in the process, we often lose the substance that made the movement powerful in the first place. While well-intentioned, the outcomes of this program would end up far removed from the goals of any advocacy or grassroots movement from which it grew. A Women in Medicine program is an interesting tool. Interesting because it's actually rather insidious. This program identifies women as the problem and then places the onus on women to educate themselves and others. It would isolate women and imply that our issues should be moved outside of the classroom or any shared public or intellectual spaces. And under the guise of empowering women, it actually serves to teach us that our issues are not relevant to our non-female peers, and in doing so reduces the opportunity to include potential allies. So, quite deceptively, a women's program is actually a tool of the patriarchy. Patriarchal systems don't only affect women, though. The same system that tells us to spend more time at home, to be less ambitious and more family-focused, is the same system that tells men not to be so. If we want to see change, we shouldn't be focusing solely on women, nor should we didactically tell men how to support us. Instead, we have to include everybody in the conversation. We should encourage male physicians to be our allies, because our issues affect them personally, and they are relevant to men, as our colleagues, our friends, our partners. Male physicians should be made aware of the issues and barriers their female counterparts face, and expected to be a part of the solution. having the space for these conversations and indeed this knowledge relegated into a separate, optional, women-exclusive program just isn't going to work. You see, equity is a lot like the female orgasm. Not all men care about it, and even fewer know how to achieve it. But wouldn't the world be a better place if we were all taught to? Right. Equity is not opt-in. Make women's issues a core part of the curriculum, and don't hold important conversations in spaces that for many reasons are not accessible to everyone. While women's programs may have worked in the past, and we respect the work of our forefathers and indeed our foremothers, for getting women to where they are now, the new generation of female physicians also represent a new generation of, and you'll forgive my foul language, a new generation of feminists. And we're not here to whisper quietly amongst ourselves on Tuesday afternoons between 4:30 and 6 and expect things to change. Our problems are society's problems. Our problems are your problem. And together, not as separate entities, we will improve the system so that it better represents all people within our society. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Is this okay volume-wise? Honored guests, Dean Resnick, ladies, I am here. It's interesting how this debate actually turned out because we've had 30 minutes of great speeches by women about women in medicine, and we get to conclude this debate with a male student who's been in medical school for 3 months. So this continues a long tradition of mansplaining, and that's our first point. But I want to address what the proposition has talked about, because I think a lot of their points really do make sense and are important points to deal with. Their main thrust is basically these problems, they might have once been problems, a lot of these things that women in medicine programs can deal with, but today we have a new set of problems, and therefore women in medicine programs are outdated. Well, I want to sort of take a step back from medicine and look at our society as a whole. And I think if you look at that, you'll realize we haven't progressed nearly as far on even these most basic problems as we think we have. What do I mean by this? Well, the Harvey Weinstein scandal, the Me Too campaign, where women and men from all over the world in every industry have shared their stories of being harassed. So in preparation for this debate, Dr. Joneja and I went on Twitter, and we found, among other Me Too hashtags, Me Too medicine and Me Too surgery. And we read stories from students, from residents, and from faculty about harassment in medicine. And we looked on the literature, and we found articles in JAMA, in the Archives of Internal Medicine, Annals of Family Medicine, Academic Medicine, you can go on, that found that many female faculty members still experience workplace harassment today. So can we really believe that 2017, the year of Harvey and Donald, is the year where we can say we've moved beyond these basic problems? I don't think these problems are basic. I don't think we've moved beyond them, and that's why I think we needed this program. I want to talk about 3 things today. First, my own privileged position. Second, implicit bias. And third, equity for all. But I want to first address some points that were brought up by our honorable guests. First, they tell us that these programs are outdated. I think it's important to recognize what this debate is. It is not about the content of a women in medicine program, because content can change. And if you ask the people who are part of the women in medicine interest group, they are very cognizant of the fact that the content of women in medicine programs has to change. So what we need to hear out of the side proposition is why women in medicine programs necessarily cannot change and cannot stay up to date. We would contend with you that they can stay up to date. More importantly, though, this debate is about the existence of women in medicine programs, not necessarily their content and whether or not it changes, but what message it sends to the wider world when a medical school has a women in medicine program, or a program that focuses on gender equity versus a school that doesn't. So we're not talking about the content of the program. That can change, and if you talk to Dr. Joneja, or if you talk to the people who run the women medicine interest group, it is changing. It is focusing on more up-to-date, more modern problems that women might face. But it's about the existence of the program and what message is sent when a school has a program versus a school that does not have a program. The second thing is that women in medicine programs are not inclusive. Well, I want to ask our honored guests, our honored opponents, why they think that having a women in medicine program necessarily precludes us from having other programs that deal with other forms of inequity. In other words, why does a woman in medicine program distract from the cause for equity for all? We would contend it actually does not distract from equity for all. It actually encourages an atmosphere where we talk about things like implicit bias, things like the way our language is used to fence in people who are disadvantaged. These are things that happen to women, but they happen to all sorts of disadvantaged groups. And you have the only program that we currently have in a medical curriculum to deal with these issues raises awareness for language that affects all people who are disadvantaged. Again, this is the existence of the program that is important here. So on to my points. I think speaking for myself and some people in front of us today, we can listen to Me Too stories and we can appreciate statistics, but still feel like inequality, gender inequality, doesn't affect us now. At least it doesn't affect, our everyday decisions or our career choices. So I want to talk about Dr. Denmark. And I think Dr. Denmark's story really illustrates the basic problems that we still face in terms of gender inequity. So you probably don't know who Dr. Denmark is, but her story is going to be familiar to you. On a flight, a passenger goes unconscious. The flight attendants request a doctor. Dr. Denmark approaches, but is denied. She's patronized. She's told, no, dear, we need a doctor, because she's not white and she's not a male. And she says, as an African-American female physician, I am all too familiar with this scenario. But what strikes me about this story is how she describes feeling the moment it happened to her. She says, the gravity of the situation just hit me like a ton of bricks. So what I take from that is Dr. Denmark, who is clearly familiar with this issue, still only fully appreciated it once she fully experienced it. So until you or I fully experience that ton of bricks, we tend to underestimate the impact and the prevalence of simple gender inequality, of explicit bias against women. And of course, I haven't felt the ton of bricks. I am in a position of privilege, but I do believe Dr. Denmark, and that's the important thing. So this instinctual feeling that some of us might harbor, that things as old-fashioned as explicit bias no longer really affect us in our everyday lives, we have to recognize where that feeling comes from. It comes from a place of privilege. Second, I want to talk about implicit bias very quickly. A study in BMJ last year found at the top 50 NIH-funded American medical schools, there were more men with mustaches than women. And this study was carried out in September. Or to look close at home, take a look at the Queen's Faculty of Surgery and their webpage. Fewer mustaches, but just as many men. So what message does that basic implicit bias, that basic fact send about who belongs in academia and who belongs in surgery and who is an imposter. So what is it like to work in those faculties for 5 years or 10 years? So I think the effect of this is slow and it's subtle, but all of us, whether or not we're male or female, we start developing a reflex, an implicit bias about what a surgeon or an academic looks like. And I think we should all honestly ask ourselves, do we have that reflex? And if we have that reflex, I contend we still need a woman in medicine program. Take another interesting study, this time at Harvard. It compared male and female surgeons that had had a patient die during their surgery, and it tracked their rates of referral afterwards. So they found that female surgeons had a substantial reduction in their rate of referrals, a loss of earnings for several months after this tragic incident, while male surgeons, no change at all. And it's interesting because this trend only emerges at the population level. You can't pin it on one individual man's sexism or explicit bias. So none of this bias is deliberate. It is systemic, as the proposition has talked about. It's the accumulated effect of small unconscious judgments. And this cruelly illustrates what imposter syndrome is. Because you can imagine a female surgeon looking around and seeing her referrals dropping. And she asks herself, why am I committing more mistakes than my male peers? Am I suited for this? I think the sad truth is she's not committing more mistakes. It just seems that way. And these forms of implicit bias are systemic. So I want to move on to how a women in medicine program can actually solve these things. And while I agree that a lot of the content is outdated, we have to remember the content of these programs can and they will, and they have changed in the past. But the most important thing, I come back to this, is the existence of the program itself. Because that, in and of itself, makes explicit a lot of the implicit biases that we otherwise would not even be aware of. As a pre-clerk, if you look at all of the interest groups that we have access to, the only one that actually deals with equity within medical schools themselves is a women in medicine program. And because that's the only program that exists, because that existence is the important thing, you should vote no to this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. In reflecting on this debate within the Canadian Physician's Mom Facebook forum, there were 106 stories of negative encounters within the workplace as a direct result of gender. Some of these stories were funny, but many were heartbreaking. If female physicians continue to have isolated programs, such as Women in Medicine, which we have had, and that clearly are not working, rather than encouraging everyone to be a part of the conversation, which would happen with curricular changes, we won't be able to change the culture and the environment within which we practice medicine. We won't be able to shatter those ceilings. The feminization of medicine is a good thing. Rather than being blamed for decreased access to care, women should be praised for achieving excellent health outcomes. Some women worked very hard for years to achieve the success that, again, some women own today. Now the challenge is to work for justice for all groups, by all groups, not just one group at a time. To speak to Dr. Denmark, she is not someone who is currently represented in Women in Medicine programs. We need female leaders to share a seat at the table, and we need to form broader policies and partnerships within our community so those who never dreamed about a career in medicine might one day come to see that as possible. Despite universal health care in Canada, race, gender, and economic disparities are reflected in inequities in health. Promoting a diverse healthcare workforce, which includes females in leadership roles, is an important key principle in eliminating these disparities. As a profession, we have an absolute responsibility to look beyond tokenistic interest programs that, again, would make a school like Queen's look very good.
Finish.
Thanks.
I think it's true that Dr. Denmark is not currently part of a women in medicine program, and that is very unfortunate, and that says a lot about the state of women in medicine programs today. But I want to ask a simple question. In what world do you think Dr. Denmark is more likely to be supported and to be helped? A world where we say we no longer need a women in medicine program, that it's no longer a problem for us, because that's the message that that will send. Or a world where we still have a women in medicine program, where we still have women and men thinking about, talking about, trying to implement different strategies to include women and other minorities. I think the answer to that question is fairly clear, and that is also the answer to this motion. But I want to address finally this point about equity for all, because I think it's really important. I think what the Women in Medicine program does at the end of the day is to introduce a language to us, a language that says that there are forces at play that we are not deliberately trying to propagate, that we aren't even aware of, that hem in and fence in people who are disadvantaged in society already. And the chief purpose, and I think the chief benefit of having this program exist, is we can use that foundation of a shared language that talks about equity, that talks about implicit bias, and use that to build towards a better future where there are women like Dr. Denmark in a women in medicine program and in medical schools around this country and around North America. So I think you should vote no for this motion. Thank you.
Well, my goodness. Romy, Roya, Mala, and Daniel, let's have an unbelievable round of applause. Articulate, humorous, meaningful. It was just unbelievably fabulous. Thank you, all four of you. Thank you so much. We'll now go to the final aspect of tonight, and we'll ask for a show of hands. How many of you now support the resolution that a women in medicine program is no longer needed in 2017? A show of hands, please. And how many of you feel the opposite, that a women in medicine program is needed in 2017? Well, I think we've had a wonderful outcome. Well, once again, thank you for a great debate. And now I'd like to invite the members of the Travill family to join us up in the front to present a plaque to our debaters and a quick photograph. And I'd like to thank you, all the audience, for a wonderful participation and for coming tonight. Thanks again.